some ways. Men and women are different in they have different tastes for different things and different ways of going about things. And for shopping, let's take shopping for example. When I get some extra money in my pocket, which is not often, but when it happens, and I can go shopping, I do not think about going to Joann's Fabrics or Yankee Candle or Pier 1 or any of those other girly places. I just don't. And in the same way, when Andrea gets some money in her pocket to go shopping, she does not think about going to Home Depot or Bass Pro Shop or GameStop. It just doesn't cross her mind, right? So men view shopping as a necessary evil. Women view shopping as a form of entertainment, right? And you have no problem going window shopping. Can I tell you this morning, I have no concept for window shopping. I have no concept for just going and looking at things that I don't plan to buy. That's not fun for me. Because men, when they go shopping, they're on a mission. And the mission is go in, get what you need, and get out as fast as you can, right? So we're just different. We're just different in those ways. My wife experienced this when my dad asked her if she wanted to go shoe shopping with him one time. And she was like, sure, I'll go shoe shopping with you. So they rode together, they went to Meijer, and my dad walked with Andrea to the shoe section. He looked for his size, he picked his size, he went to the cash register and he checked out and he was gone. And Andrea said she had never experienced anything like that. She's like, and I said, that's because you're not a man. Men, we know what we like. We know that our old one wore out. We just need a new one. And we know our size and we know what we like and we just get it and get out. My mom, on the other hand, she's got to try on each pair of shoes and walk around for 10 minutes and make sure that it's comfortable, right? How many of you can go in and buy a pair of shoes without even trying it on? How many this morning? Okay. How many of you like to wear it around and walk around for 10 minutes? That's okay. We're just different. How many of you know that in America we are blessed to even just be able, if we need a pair of shoes, to just go in and buy a pair of shoes, and most of us, we can do that without even thinking twice about it, just do it. We're blessed. We are blessed. And how many of you know sometimes we forget that? Sometimes we forget how blessed we are. Sometimes we forget that we are blessed to be a blessing. The Bible talks about that. We are blessed not just to enjoy all the blessings ourselves, but we are blessed to be a blessing to others. And sometimes we need reminded of that. We are uniquely positioned in America to help people in need. But have you ever had this happen? Where maybe you're driving along or you're walking along and you see somebody in need and you think to yourself, I would really like to help that person, but what's the thought that comes next? But I don't have time, right? I got to get to the next thing, and then there's a thing after that, and then there's the next thing. I would love to stop, but I just don't have the time. My schedule's really full today. Does that ever happen? Yes. Or have you ever had this happen? Oh man, I would really love to help this person in need, but I don't have the money, right? Man, I'm just strapped financially right now. I just don't have the money. And you mean that. You really would like to help. But there's no, and we introduced this concept last week, there's no margin in our lives. So imagine a piece of paper. It has a margin around the edges, right? Empty space that if you wanted to write an extra note in that margin, you could, because there's empty margin. You could write extra notes. But most of us live in such a way that we have no margin. We have no extra time in our schedule. We have no extra money in our budget. And so that's the problem, is we have no margin. But as I mentioned last week, I believe that the problem goes even deeper than that. And that is that we are pretty attached to the things of this world. We like the things of this world, and we're very attached to them. That's why we've been singing this song, and I'm so thankful Phil was willing to take the band and sing, "All I know is I am not home yet. This is not where I belong." Because we need that reminder that this world is not our home. We are not of this world. Jesus said he's not of this world. He said his followers are not of this world. Heaven is our ultimate home. Our citizenship is in heaven. And so sometimes we have to learn to let go of the things of the world. And so we're going to be in 1 Timothy chapter 6. 1 Timothy, and we do have some Bibles that look like this. that should be underneath the chairs in front of you, or you can use a Bible app if you like that. We don't care. Just use whatever works for you. As long as it gets you in the Word, use that. I like the app. Some apps are really cool. You can make notes in them. You can highlight different things. But paper Bibles are good too. So, 1 Timothy, this was a guy named the Apostle Paul, and he was writing a letter to his son in the faith, Timothy. He had brought Timothy up in the ways of Jesus, in the ways of the faith. And in 1 Timothy chapter 6, we're going to learn about God's goal for us. God's goal for us. 1 Timothy 6, starting in verse 6. He writes, "But godliness with contentment is great gain." Everybody say contentment. "For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it." How many of you know that's true? "But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. Those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap, and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction." How many of you have ever seen people chasing after riches and it just led them to ruin and destruction? "For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs." Man, that's sad that it would even take you away from your faith. We're going to look at verse 17. Skip to verse 17. It says, "Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in" who? God, "who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Command them to do good." Maybe some of your translations say do good works. "To be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to" what? Share. "In this way they will lay up treasure for themselves in heaven as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life." And so if we lay this out, what we just read, God's goal for us is to do good works, to be generous, and share. But in order to do those two things, we have to learn to be content, and we have to put our trust in God, right? And there's actually a third thing. We have to see ourselves as rich. Otherwise, we say, well, this doesn't apply to me because I'm not rich. Because it said, command those who are rich. So let's stop and pause there. Are we rich? Are we rich? How many of you have electricity or running water in your house? Okay, that's most of us, I figured. Well, guess what? You are better than 1/4 of the world. 1/4 of the world doesn't have that. How about you have a toilet in your house? Anybody have a toilet? Okay. Guess what? Better than 1/3 of the world. They don't have a toilet. How about clean water? Anybody have access to clean water? You are better than 1 billion people on this earth. The poverty level in the U.S. is $11,000 a year, but even that is richer than 82% of the world. Wow. It's a perspective, isn't it? 3 billion live off of $2 a day. Wow. If you make the median, the average U.S. income, you're in the top 1% wealthiest in the world. At that salary, you make $1,000 a week, while 3 billion makes $730 a year, the whole year. Do you have a car? Anybody get here in a car today? Guess what? You're better than 85% of the world, but guess what? I'll bet you have 2 cars, because that's the U.S. average. But just having 1 car puts you better than 85% of the world. Guess what? You're rich. We are rich. I know we may not see ourselves as rich, but we are. We truly are. This scripture is to us. So God wants us to do good works, be generous, and share. But guess what? We can't do that when every bit of our schedule is filled up, or every penny that we make is spent on ourselves, if we don't leave any margin, right? A good servant makes himself available to his master. Let's talk about Satan's traps. How many of you know Satan lays traps for us to bite on? He throws out some bait, hopes that we bite on it, and he can reel us in. So God's goal is for us to serve. as he gives us opportunity, right? But Satan's goal is to keep people busy chasing after stuff so that we don't have time to do the serving that God wants us to do. But here's what I really believe in America. Our problem is not love of money. I don't think most of us are like Uncle Scrooge, always counting our money, right? But our issue might be with a love of stuff. We love the stuff of the world. We have a love of a certain kind of lifestyle, a lifestyle of comfort and convenience. We love our comfort and convenience, right? Like, I don't feel like cooking tonight. I'm just going to run out and I'm going to get some drive-through, right? It's convenience, isn't it? It's convenience, and we like it. I like it, okay? I'm not standing up here saying I don't, but sometimes chasing after that lifestyle can take up all of our life and we don't have the margin, right? Chasing after upgrades. So we have our necessities, the things we have to live off of, which the Bible said, what? 2 categories. It said food and clothing. That's our necessities. But Satan loves to get us chasing after those upgrades, the non-essentials. They're just upgrades. So me and Andrea, when we got married, we went on a honeymoon. We went down to sunny Florida. And we had Andrea found this stay. It was unbelievable price. Unbelievable. We got 3 days in Orlando, 3 days in Daytona Beach. And it was like only $150. And I was like, Andrea, is that for real? Like, that sounds like a scam. It really was only $150 or whatever it was. I don't remember the exact amount. But it was a steal compared to what we were getting. And so we get down there and we get checked in. We had to check in. And they said, okay, we see that you, it included a rental car and everything. It included stay for 6 days and a rental car. And so they checked us in. They're like, okay, we see that you have the rental, and it's this level. It's the economy. And they said, now, we want to ask you about upgrades. Would you like 4 tires on that car? We were like, yes, we would. No, they didn't really ask us that. But it was like super low, the lowest economy. I think it was like a Geo Prism. You remember Geo Prisms? They only have 3-cylinder engines, you know. It's like, we're going to be putting around Florida. And they're like, you have the Geo Prism, but if you would like to upgrade for a small fee for like $20 more a day, you can get the next level up. And we're like, well, we don't want to be in the Geo Prism, so sure, we'll take that upgrade. And they said, now, when you get to Daytona Beach, you're going to be staying in this condo, and that's very nice. That's a very nice condo. However, we have one that's right on the beach. Would you like to be on for a small upgrade fee of the X amount of dollars per day? We could put you right on the beach. Well, we're on our honeymoon. Of course we want to be right on the beach, right? And so we said, sure. And pretty soon that 150 became more and more and more. And it was much more expensive than what we originally thought it was going to be, right? And I believe that's how the devil does us, right? He gets us chasing after those upgrades. And pretty soon we've bitten off more than we can chew. Like, yes, we need a house, and you know, there's always going to be bigger and better houses, right? And there's always going to be bigger and better cars, and there's always going to be bigger and better and newer phones, and there's always going to be bigger and better and newer TVs. But we can chase after these upgrades to where pretty soon we've bitten off more than we can chew, and we've maxed ourselves out in what we can pay each month, and we've left ourselves no margin. Right? And so when an opportunity comes, we go, I would like to help, but I'm maxed out, right? And then there's a domino effect where we're working more and more to support that lifestyle of upgrades that we bought, right? And so now we're really busy, working all the time, and you know, so we can afford these. Jesus talked about this in the parable of the sower. And if you're familiar with the story, he talks about 3 different kinds of soil. The third kind was, he said, a plant grew up, and the plant represents us, people, followers of Jesus. And the plant grew up, but then these thorns came in, and you remember what happened? It said they choked them out, right? The thorns choked out the plant and made it unfruitful. And the Bible word for unfruitful can also be translated unproductive, which you can see the similarity, right? Unfruitful, unproductive. And then when he was explaining the parable to his disciples, he said what the thorns are. Remember, he said the worries of this life, the deceitfulness of wealth, and the desire for other things. And that's what Satan gets us to chase after, right? The deceitfulness of wealth. Chase after this. It's not really going to last, but I'm going to make you think it is. The deceitfulness of wealth and the desire for other things. And that's us. We bite on those desire for other things. And he says, it's amazing. Jesus knew 2,000 years ago that today we'd be talking about this. And how those desires for all these other things can choke us out and make us unproductive in God's kingdom. Right? So what is the secret? What is going to help us win today? Well, we already read it. It's a word that starts with C. I had you say it out loud. It's called contentment. Can we learn to be content with our basic needs as defined as food and clothing, right? Can we learn to be content with those things? There is another way. There is another way possible for us today. It's called the simplified life. The simplified. Can we simplify things to create the margin, right? And it's hard to believe that another way is possible when all you've ever grown up in is in that certain kind of culture where they did things that way, where people maxed themselves out, right, and did things this certain way until you see someone who does it a different way. And you go, oh, wow, there's a different way. I don't have to do it the way everybody does. I can do it, and it inspires us. My favorite story by Dave Ramsey in Financial Peace University that he tells is there was this young couple freshly out of college. They both got jobs, and they looked for their first place to live. And they found this one-bedroom, tiny little apartment over a little old lady's garage. You know what I'm talking about? The one-bedroom apartment. They said, we're just going to live in this little apartment, and it was really cheap. But it's really small, right? But they said, hey, we can deal with this. And here's what we're going to do. For 4 years, this was their plan. They lived off of her $35,000 a year. They saved his $50,000 a year. And so after 4 years, come on, math majors, how much did they have left? $200,000 saved up, right? They went out and paid cash a $150,000 house. And then he wrote his wife a check and said, here's a check for $50,000, go buy yourself furniture for our new house. Now, how nice would that be? That'd be pretty awesome, wouldn't it? That'd be amazing to be debt-free. You don't even have no debt for your house, right? And to have all the furniture. See, that's not what most people do, though, is it? That's outside the box, and it takes seeing a different way to be like, oh, wow, I didn't even know you could do it that way. Because what are most people going to do? They're going to combine their 35 and their 50,000. They're going to go to the bank. They're going to say, how much of a house can we get for $85,000 a year? Oh, that's the max amount, $250,000. Okay, let's go look for a $250,000 house, right? We're going to get the max, and we're going to put ourselves in a what year loan? 30-year. You know the deal. Everybody does a 30-year loan, right? 30-year loan and get themselves bogged down for 30 years, right? Wow, what if you could be debt-free of that house in 4 years? It's a different way. And one thing I love about that story is they were content enough to live in that little bitty apartment, right? They said, hey, we can do this for 4 years. It's a different way. And so I want to tell you this morning, there is another way, the simplified life. There's a different way to go about things. You don't have to do it the way the rest of the world does. So let's talk about the way forward. The way forward. How can we create margin? How can we do it? Well, most of us, including this was me and Andrea when we first graduated from college, most of us have already gotten ourselves up to our eyeballs in debt. Okay? So you're like, man, that would be nice if I had done it the way that couple did it, but I didn't do it that way. I'm already stuck in a 30-year, right? What can you do? Well, we can work to get out of debt. And if we could get out of our debt, guess what we would have in our budget? Margin. We would have the margin we're looking for. So, in your next steps, I have make a budget. Make a budget and leave room for charity. If that's you, check that off. Some of you might check all these today, and that would be good, because all these are good. Make a budget, leave room for charity. Speaking of a Bible verse that talks about margin, you couldn't find a better verse than Leviticus 23:22. He was speaking to the Israelites, and God said, when you reap the harvest of your land, Do not reap to the very edges of your field. Leave them for the who? Poor and the foreigner, right? So they lived in an agricultural, agrarian culture where they raised their own stuff, right? They grew their own food, they raised their own livestock. And to those people, he said, when you grow your crops, don't harvest every last bit of it. Instead, save the edges, save the margin, on the margins for the poor. By the way, anyone know the story of Ruth and Boaz in the Bible? She was gleaning from the harvest, from the edges, right, before she met Boaz, because he left the edges. So how many of you raise your own crops and livestock today? Not many of us. Not many of us. Some of you grow some really good vegetables. I've tasted them. But most of us don't go into a profession like that. So what's the equivalent today for us? Because we don't have the crops to leave, right, for the poor and the foreigner. I believe the equivalent today for us is whatever your income is, don't spend every bit of it. Leave some on the margins. Leave some extra. Make a budget. Leave room for charity. That's basically what it's saying, right? So if some of you are in debt already, you can work what's called the debt snowball. Anybody ever heard of the debt snowball? This is really genius. I wish I had come up with it, but I didn't. But hey, if I'm gonna steal stuff, I'm gonna steal the good stuff. So the debt snowball, I love it. It's genius. Let's say you got 5 different kinds of debts. Some of you have more. I'm sorry. Maybe it's 10, but whatever. 5. Let's say you got 5, and you're going to work on the smallest one first. And let's say it's $50 a month to pay off a credit card or whatever. Okay? You're going to pay that off. Now, when you pay it off, guess what? You got an extra $50 to roll into your next debt. Let's say that next debt the payment is $100 a month. Well, now you can pay $150 from the previous debt. Right? You work and pay that off. Now you got how much? $150 to roll into the next debt until all your debts, except for your house, are gone. How nice would that be? Just sit in that a minute. How nice would it be to have all your debts, except for your house, paid off? That'd be a cool place. Now, imagine someone comes along and needs help. You've got a little breathing room, right? You say, you know what? I could help that person, because I've created this margin. And so maybe that's where some of you start, is paying off the debt. But it's not going to work unless you do the budget part also, because you're not going to pay off the debt unless you have a plan for your money. You got to sit down. And nobody really enjoys doing it. Well, some nerds do, making a budget. But most people don't like it, but it's necessary, and it's good because it gives you a plan. It gives you a way to go forward in life, right? So sit down and do it. And then when you pay off your debt, guess what? Don't go into debt again. Don't do that mess again. All right, some of you, maybe your way forward to creating margin is make some cuts. Make some cuts. Like going out to eat versus making yourself a sandwich, okay? Look, it only takes 5 minutes to make a sandwich, right? Don't we all love to go out to eat? I mean, yeah, it's good. It's fun. It's good. It feels good to go out to eat. But which is cheaper, making a sandwich or going out to eat? The sandwich. Me and Nelson, we're simpatico right here. We're both the type. He said AEP, he could eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich every day. And that's me too. Like, I don't mind a peanut butter and jelly. I'm good with it. Or a lunch meat sandwich. But, make a sandwich instead of going out to eat for lunch every day. You're spending a lot of money that you could be helping with people. Eating out, shopping, entertainment, kids' activities. Guys, sometimes we get our kids so full of activities, we don't know whether we're coming or going. I mean, we're just running, the parents and the kids, right? Because the parents are the taxi cabs. And sometimes we get our kids so wrapped up in all these activities. None of them are evil, none of them are bad, but they're doing so many, there wouldn't be time to serve somebody if we wanted to. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of those activities aren't feeding their soul. They're not feeding their soul. And sometimes we can get them involved in so many of these other activities, it takes them away from Christ-centered activities where they could be having their souls fed, right? Do we see the problem, right? None of them are evil. None of those things are evil in and of themselves, but sometimes it's too much. And so could we cut back? Could we scale back? We try to tell our kids, you can do one activity at a time. If that's track, do track. If that's musical, do the musical. If that's, whatever. One thing at a time. We actually broke that rule. And now we're regretting it because we're doing the taxi cab thing. but we want our kids to experience these different things, right? And none of them are bad, but sometimes it gets to be too much. And then the next step, second to last, is put serving activities on your calendar and protect. Look at your calendar for the whole year and put those serving. Hey, we're going to serve as a family. We're going to do at least 4 things this year, and we're going to put them in our calendar, and we're going to protect those. We're not going to let anything else steal that serving opportunity, right? Because serving, God wants us to serve, right? So we're going to do this. Imagine a simplified life. Can you imagine it? Can you imagine a different way this morning? I want you to imagine a life where you live on less, and because you're living on less, you have more time and more money to serve in your margin, to help, right? And opportunities are then welcomed instead of resented or regretted, right? And don't you think that God will help you? Let's say you set a goal today. You say, God, I want more margins so that I can help people in need. And so, God, I want to pay off some debt. Don't you think if you set that goal and God hears you, that he'll want to help you with that goal? I think he absolutely would. In fact, he might even make extra ways to pay some of that debt off sooner. Julie was just telling me that they got an unexpected gift from a place they weren't expecting this morning. God can do stuff like that. When you set a goal and say, God, I want to give to you, your church, and to helping people, he can give you these extra unexpected blessings, right, to help you pay off those debts. I believe God will help you if you set a godly goal. He will help you, right? And so the next step is pray 5 times this week, 5 days this week, asking God to help you be more generous. Be more generous, right? You think that's a good thing to pray? I mean, because let's face it, human nature is to be stingy or selfish, right? We want to spend it all on ourselves, right? I mean, if we're being honest, that's human nature. So God, help me to be more generous with my money, with what you bless us with. So, all right, guys, we got the plan, right? I mean, is anyone unclear about the plan going forward? We got our plan. Can we make that goal this morning? Can we make the goal and say, God, I want more margin. I want to be available for when you put things in my path. So, Father, help us with this. Help us to set the goal. Help us to mean it. And help us to stick to it. Because we know the devil's going to be after us as soon as we start saying, oh, I want more margin to serve and do godly things. And so, Father, help us to stick with us. Help us to stick with a plan. And some of these things aren't going to be easy. Like doing a budget, it's going to be hard if we haven't done it in a while. But God, help us to do it. Help us with all these things. Lord, we want to serve you. I hope this is everyone's attitude this morning is, I do want to serve the Lord. And I do want to help, and I do want to give, and I do want to give of my time. And so, Father, help us with our goal that we labor